Yes, we're good. Okay.
We try.
All right. I'm going to close this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to open with a joke because I always do. How can you tell the difference between a specialist and an agent? Can y'all hear me really, really good and back and everywhere else? We are loud. They're so polite and kind. Well, a joke, but yeah, no. So that's just a few seconds on cooperative extension. A lot of people aren't really familiar with what we do. My position is as an agent, an extension agent. And I basically work at the ground level with clients, like people like you. The specialists, they work with us. They work with researchers. They are researchers. And then they also can work with the clients. So they have a very broad base, which is a lot of times why if someone asks me a question, it will take a while for me to get back because normally I'm talking to Jocelyn, Dr. Beard, or Russ, or one of the other specialists to try to get a little information, to the point where sometimes I go out of state to get information. Utah, New Mexico, Colorado, and then Southern California are some of the areas that have similar issues to that we do. So if it takes me a little while, that's why. My job is basically to facilitate conversations and reach out to you guys and for you guys to come to me and figure out what we can do to help you. So when you kind of think about reaching out to us, just kind of think about what you need and what you would like to see from us. Because keep in mind, there's one of me, you guys probably know Sterling, he's a program coordinator over on the Apache side. He teaches like the Master Gardener, the Seed to Supper, he does the 4-H garden, and you know, he's running nonstop. We're doing heritage apple programs, talking about, you know, grafting apples from the 1860s, things like that, helping the tribes build up their heritage apple grafting orchards, things like that. So when you come to us, just come with an idea. I can't do research. I do research, but I can't do specific research. So if you're like, hey, I want to research how well X does on my farm, I can't research it, but what I can do is I can help pave the way for finding answers. So if you have a novel idea, a new idea, then I can go ahead and just figure out how we can do it, but I can't do research with here. The researchers can do research. So I get a lot of calls. I have a great research idea. This is what we're going to do. And I was like, that's great. I can't do the research. I don't have the funding. My funding is specific to be on the ground for everybody here in the room and online. And that hasn't, you know, been able to hear this. So that's just a little bit what we do. The specialists they're available, but you got to remember they do run research programs. A lot of them have grad students. A lot of them teach at university level. And then on top of that, they're also running the side programs. So just know that your voice is heard. You know, sometimes it just takes a little while to figure out the nuts and bolts. So that was my introductory speech. So now my actual topic today is alternative and specialty crops for Northeastern Arizona. If you're online and you're not in Northeastern Arizona, don't stress. This actually can be applied to most of the state. It's listed in the agenda as higher elevations. I'm from Colorado. I grew up at 9,000 feet. Higher elevation to me is not the same as Arizona high elevation. High desert versus low desert to me is a completely different thing. So I do use alternative and specialty crops, but because the desert area, the valley area has a flip-flop growing season, you can actually just flip them. And so if I'm saying like it's 120 days in the summer, just it's 120 days in the winter, things like that. But this is kind of geared towards what can grow up here, what I grow up my farm, and what I've worked with farmers growing. So, Chris, I think you're gonna have to be my, is there a, oh, hey. Okay, so a bit about me. I am the Extension Ag Agent for Navajo, Apache, and Northern Greenlee counties. And with that, I do support the federally recognized tribal extension program agents up on Navajo and Hopi. So I do work with them. My specialty is sustainable agriculture or agroecology. And then I also am focused on organic and native seed industry. So if you've spent any time around me, I basically am a plant nerd that likes to hang out with seeds and animals and my goats. I do small farm and ranch support, plant identification and botany for ranchers, vegetation ecology on agricultural lands, and I am a disabled veteran, so I work with veteran and disabled farmers who are not veterans with support for them. My goal is to keep farmers farming, ranchers ranching, regardless of your accessibility needs. So to me, that is a huge priority. I used to be a forester, a wildland firefighter, and also a silviculturist, the reforestation specialist. I did retire from that. It's just agriculture is my blood, it's my life. Forestry is fine, but agriculture is what makes me get up every morning. I have a bachelor's in forest ecology and management and rangeland ecology, and I have a master's in ecological restoration. I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. So if your farm's not growing, your ranch is not growing, I'm the one that likes to come in and try to fix it. So with the ecological restoration side, I really bring home a lot of those ideals to come in to the farm and to the ranch to be able to talk about what can we do to make it better. And it's an interactive process. I have a lot of people that are like, I want this, make it happen. And I'm like, I will be with you while you walk through this path, but I will not do it for you. I don't have time. 8 years in the Army. I'm a farmer at Double T Bar Farm. I raise goats, herbs, and duck eggs. And then my new business that I've been developing and working, and I'm pretty much almost there, is Silver Creek Native Plants, where I am a contract seed grower for a couple companies, and I do foundation seed growing, which basically means you get a seed you want and you want specific genetics, you give it to me, I grow it out for those genetics, and then I pass it on to the other farmers that grow it out in large quantities. So I like that niche that you can fit everything in that makes that genetics, and then I will pass those on to the farmers that grow it out. I do grow out larger amounts for a couple of seed companies. Oh, this is what I grow on my farm right now. So sorghum, I do floral, a lot of native plants, seeds. If you've gotten seeds from Native Seed Search or the other company just escaping my brain right now, you've probably gotten my seeds. Short season cotton, amaranth. I do a lot of arid and alkaline tolerant veggies, and then a lot of culinary and medicinal herbs. And so for my presentation, I want to set the ground with some definitions for you, because specialty crops and alternative crops are both defined in government and not defined in government. Where does most of the money that farmers can get grants from and loans from comes from the government, right? There are private grants and stuff, but they're our biggest partners. It's hard. Jan's here, and I'm sure she's heard both sides of it. Some people don't want the government to be part of the process. I find it impossible to not be partners with government resources because they have some of the best resources that you cannot beat. So for me, they're a partner in my farm. And as Jan knows, I'll be calling NRCS shortly to start I'm almost on year 3. So I only have an 1.5 acres. So I am a small scale farmer. I do not meet the $25,000 threshold by any means. I don't even see that in not even close, not even in the mirror, but it's okay. So specialty crops, fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruits, and horticulture and nursery crops, including floriculture. So they're leaving a huge broad interpretation about what these specialty crops mean. Specialty crops, and we'll talk about it later, there's a grant specifically tied to specialty crops, which is one of the reasons why I hit on it so hard, is because up here, we're not a cropping area. Navajo County, Apache County, not a cropping area. It is hard to grow things here in a large volume. People do, they've been working at it for years. It is a hard thing to walk into. Say, I'm gonna be a farmer in Navajo County or Apache County, buy a tractor, buy all your implements, spend $2 million, buy a farm, and then you're struggling with your outputs because it's hard. So I'm like, hey, let's do specialty crops up here. So that can be a lot of different things under horticulture. Now, in reference to wild plants, because we're going to talk about that as a potential crop, plants that are specialty crops can be collected from the wild, but in order to become specialty, it has to undergo a cultivation process. So I can go collect a wild plant from the, okay, so I can, with a permit, I can go collect a wild plant from the forest. I can plant those seeds, I'm cultivating it, now it becomes a specialty crop. But until that point, if you go out in the woods and say, I'm collecting a specialty crop, it's not a specialty crop until it is cultivated once, and then it becomes a specialty crop. So this can be like in the floral, people will wild harvest ferns in the Northeast. There is some wiggle room. What is not a specialty crop? Grains, oilseed crops, bioenergy crops. So if you're looking at trying to do any of the biomass or ethanol, not specialty. Forages, we're big on forages up here. Good alfalfa area, good grass area. Those are not a specialty crop. Field crops, so think south, think of the South United States. Think of South Arizona. If it's grown in a field, then then you're looking at it, but that's peanut, sugar beets, cotton, anything like that. And then plants federally controlled as illegal drug plants. Remember, when you're talking about cannabis, cannabis is okay at the state level, not okay at the federal level when it comes to a crop. Okay, so you have to look at that as a different thing. It's not a specialty crop because of the fact that it is federally controlled as illegal. But when that changes, if and when that changes, then they may or may not consider it a specialty crop. So then it gets even more fun. Let's look at amaranth, right? Everyone's familiar with amaranth. It's a grain and it's also a green. So amaranth may be grown as a leafy green or it may be grown as a grain. So leafy greens are vegetables. Therefore, amaranth grown in that manner would be a specialty crop. However, amaranth grown for grain would not be a specialty crop. I like to get at least two things out of what I grow, green and then grain. I could say that I'm going to get a specialty crop block grant for my amaranth as a leafy green, but I can't use that if it's going to be a grain. So my bookkeeping gets 10 times harder as far as determining how much is the green and how much is the grain. Now talk about alternative crops. So you have specialty crops. We've looked at that definition. So let's talk about alternative crops. And for alternative crops, there's not a definition. There's examples online. You're gonna find a lot of, like, this is what an alternative crop is. For this talk, a crop, so USDA is calling a crop a plant that is cultivated for sale or subsistence. For the purpose of this talk, alternative is gonna be something that differs from a set norm. So for our area, we're looking at what is not, alternative crops will be defined as a crop that is not or has not been traditionally grown or is consistently grown in the timeline of this geographic area. So basically, we're going to talk about an alternative crop that's not something that we see regularly. Hay, alfalfa, pumpkins, sweet corn. Those are our traditional. Also, we can also add in the definition of animal crop to this one. Alternative crops are only plant-based. My argument is alternative crops can also include animals. And then it may or may not qualify as a specialty crop also. We're not going to talk about animals as a alternative crop, but you definitely can talk about them in the fact that there's people bringing over special forms of cattle, cattle or pigs or chickens that are going to do better in arid environments that could be maybe outside the norm. Sarah did it with Kikos. Kikos were not known here. So Sarah has a breeding program here that's making Kikos very arid tolerant for this area. So the distinction, and why making this distinction is because funding. USDA has a specific funding for these grant programs for these specialty crops. State of Arizona administers them. So I just put a picture of the website. You can Google the Agriculture Marketing Service and look up their specialty crop block grant program. It is the most awkward thing to say when you're trying to explain it. And that is pretty much, people will always ask me, how can I be a farmer without taking out loans? Your specialty crop is going to be your best way of getting in farming you're still going to require funding sources outside of it, but specialty crops are going to be some of the easiest grants to get. And by easy, it's going to be in air quotes, because the fact that grants are hard to get. They're hard to write. Then sustainable agriculture. I threw this definition in so we kind of understood where I'm coming from in this conversation. So sustaining farmers, resources, and communities by promoting farming practices and methods that are profitable, environmentally sound, and good for communities. So basically what we're doing is, instead of saying, hey, your farming practice is wrong, what we're trying to say is, if it's not this, so if you're not actually making a profit, is it sustainable? If you're not taking care of yourself or your family, it's not sustainable. And is it ecologically sound? It's not sustainable, or it is sustainable. How can we meet that? I have a picture of a stool, like a three-legged stool. If you take out one of those legs, the whole stool falls over. You can't have that stool upright without those 3 legs. So it's understanding and working with farmers and ranchers to maintain the ecological and the personal and the financial and the community value in agriculture. And it's not a new concept, it's a hard concept. With this, when we talk about the crops, my assumptions, we're looking at 3,000, 3,500 to 700, 7,000. It's a little tired last night, that should be below. 7 and 15 inches average per year precipitation, mostly sandy with some clay. Out here, if you're buying land here, or if you have not farmed here, or you have not ranched here, sand is a part of your life. It will always be a part of your life. Winds is gonna be an issue with the sand. It's gonna be an issue with growing things. If you have clay, it's always gonna be like a silty clay. If you go up to the rim, if you go by Pine Top, Lakeside, you're gonna get more into the clays out there. But in the maybe northeastern part, you're gonna get mainly sand with some clay, occasionally clay soils. So I'm looking at crops that are gonna fit that profile. And the frost dates, May is the last, first is gonna be October. I went and pulled data from weather.gov and then a few weather stations scattered around. And I actually went back for the past 10 years and pulled the last frost date and the first frost date. And so this is just based on the past 10 years. Your alkaline status of your soils out here, your 99.9%, I think I've had one, is going to be greater than 7, if not greater than 8. So when I was doing my pH, all of them turned purple. And if you had the little card, 8.0, that's your alkaline. A lot of them have calcium carbonate in them, which then is a whole nother situation where it ties up all kinds of issues with the plants. So, but for right now, we're going to talk about alkaline. We're looking at alkaline soils. So these plants have to like alkaline soils. They're not set in stone. There are local biological factors. So don't quote me on this, like, this is going to be what it is. Like, no, you might grow something. My neighbor grows lemons down the road from me. I live in Taylor. He has a lemon tree. If I try to have a lemon tree, there's no way. I'm lucky with my plum, and that's on a good year. So, there's going to be those little, we call them ecotomes, or little niches. Okay, first one, and this is the one I grew. So I grew this variety this year, and last year I grew White Mountain Apache sorghum. The grain is called Milo. And these are just suggestions. You got to do your research as far as the seed source and what you want to use. I go organic and heirloom. Like, that's my preference. I'm a seed person. I believe in protecting seed for open access. That's just me. So your biological factors, you want a pH range of 6.5 to 7.5. I pushed mine to almost 8. So I got mine in alkaline soils. My actual return, as far as how much seed I got out of it, was a little bit less than my better areas, but I still got some. You will need to supplement with irrigation with sorghum. It's not as drought tolerant as some of the others. And then it stays up to harvest about 120. This particular variety, it was grown in Colorado. My seed source was Pueblo Seed and Food Company, who I absolutely love. They're a small farm. They grow their own seed. Since they're local, apparently somehow the seed got the message, and I was actually harvesting my first batch at 90 days. And then I just harvested before the frost my second batch, which normally that didn't happen with the White Mountain Apache sorghum last year. So I was pretty happy with the 90 to 120 day grain and syrup. So I don't grow for forage. My neighbors down the road do, but I don't grow for forage. They're self-pollinating, so you don't have to worry about crossing. But you can grow for forage. I think it's really cool to squeeze the stalks and get all the syrup out of them. So, I mean, that's just me. And then the grains I grind up and you can cook with it, bake with it. So the uses, livestock forage, it's an ancient grain, air quotes. It doesn't have a true definition. It's just what kind of makes us feel good about defining some of these older non-glutinous grains. Syrup, biofuel, ethanol, ethnic cooking, crafting, fencing, floral arrangements, brooms, and fermented beverages. So the reason I'm telling you this is I want you to think about your market value here. When you have that many uses, when you have that many uses, then you have a better chance of finding a viable market. Okay, so let's look at our market potential. Local farmers markets are food businesses, value-added products, so syrups, grains, flowers, like flowers, plural, or flowers like the kind you eat. Regional market outlets depending on your product type. So you could wholesale it potentially to some of the larger health food companies. Biofuel or ethanol, there's only one biofuel place, big word is escaping me. It's in Tempe. I believe they're only taking certain products right now. So I don't think they're taking anything like sorghum. And just the cost to get it down there is not going to be worth the value. So that's like later if someone, invests the $10 million to do the biofuel. Local and regional flower markets. When you pull the sorghum, it's so pretty. And then once you pull off all the seed, it makes these really pretty brooms. And then craft fairs. It is primarily an alternative crop. It's not a specialty crop. It can cross-pollinate with other types of sorghum or sorghum-like grasses. It is self-pollinating, but it can cross. So if you have someone that is growing like forage sorghum really close by, you're just going to want to be concerned that it might contaminate your crop. And then your equipment needs your startup. It's going to depend on your product. Syrup, you need processing. Grain and forage and biofuel will need planting and harvesting equipment if grown on large parcels. Small scale growers can get away with less equipment. I do it by hand. Like, I go out there and I cut it and I process it all by myself. And it's work, but to me, it's worth it. It's a good product. To me, it's a good product. I didn't put it out in the market yet, so I just like it. Yeah, sorry, Chris, it's in Taylor. I just caught my eye. Yeah. Okay, amaranth is another one of those ones that I really would love to see more production up here because of the market value and because of the ability. So your pH range is 5 to 8.0, right? So if you guys are all, I handed back your results and you're all around the 7.5 to 8.0, look at amaranth. So it needs a minimum of 10 inches per year. And that's not irrigation, that's 10 inches of rainfall. You have to time your rainfall, It's not a monsoon crop, but it's a good crop to maybe consider for dry farming. So at greens, 30 days, floral 60 days, and then seed grain 90 days. So it ancient grain. I personally love popping amaranth. If you guys have not tried it, you go get amaranth and you put it in a ungreased skillet and it pops like popcorn, the tiniest popcorn you ever see. And you mix some honey in it. It's a Mexican treat. So good, but it is so fun to pop. Do not grease your pan. You'll be sorry. Cooking, crafting, floral arrangements, dye, landscape ornamental. I'm sure most of you guys have seen floral bouquets with amaranth in it. It's beautiful the way it drapes. It's got a lot of movement. And if you know Ruby Jewel Flowers out of Sholo, she does an amazing bouquet with some amaranth. And then, so landscape ornamental, people do love to plant amaranth when it gets really big. You have those huge, long runners. It's just a beautiful plant. We'll get to it's good friends in the wild. So the market potential, wholesale. There is companies that are looking for wholesale growers of the grain. So there is a wholesale. Local markets, it is not, it's something that you could probably go to Sunshine Herbs. You could go to some of the other companies and say, hey, can I grow some amaranth for you? Something like that. Value-added products is going to be huge. Ground amaranth flour. I buy it off Native Seed Search or off of a company in California, and I'm paying $18 a bag plus shipping. So, I mean, for me, I'm like, come on, like this value is here. Why are we not taking advantage of it? And so I grew a lot last year, but I have edible red leaf amaranth, which is beautiful in salads. And then a midnight red amaranth, which was the on greens, floral, and grain. I do a lot of Hopi red dye amaranth for my dyeing friends. I have a lot of friends that are fiber artists. So this is really cool. I went to Florida on a conference for a sustainable agriculture conference, and we went to a farm, sustainable agriculture farm down in Miami. And this gentleman didn't speak any English. He's like, Kalu, Kalu. And I'm looking at it and I'm just like, amaranth? It's like, yes, amaranth, Kalu. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So Kalu is like a pot green, or like what we think of like chard in the South or something like that, but it's a staple of their diets. And so I'm walking there looking at this field of amaranth going, are you insane? It's perfect. Like, why would you grow amaranth like that? He makes bank. Like this guy, he sells this to the Caribbean population, to that entire population up and down the East Coast, and he does very well for himself. He found this niche, and it's amaranth. Like, I'm like, my mind is blown. I'm like, are you kidding me? I sell the, seeds and stuff, but I mean, it's just, you have to find your niche. And I thought that was amazing that he's selling amaranth for $100,000 to $200,000 a year in profit. He does everything himself. They don't do anything mechanical. So they have the land is rented through a special use organization. But I mean, that's some profit there. So specialty crop is going to be pot herbs or greens and floral. So you can do specialty crop. Alternative is going to be your grains. It can cross-pollinate with our absolute favorite friend, pigweed, or Amaranthus retroflexus, or Palmer's amaranth is the other one. It can cross, which is not great if you're saving the seed, because you can't then sell the seed. It's been contaminated by a weed. So something that's actually listed as a noxious weed. So you can eat it, it's fine, but I know for me, I can't sell it. And if I'm selling seeds, it's kind of useless. Pigweed and Palmer's amaranth are resistant to glyphosate. So plus you can't dump glyphosate on a field that you're growing the thing in the exact same family. So having that weed here is a major issue. And then for large scale operations and acreages, you will need equipment and planters and harvests. For small scale operations, hand planting and harvesting is possible. Cleaning seed is, you need a clean and sanitized area if it's going to be used for human consumption. And for growing greens, you do need a clean and sanitizing area as well as cold storage. So it's just like any other green setup or any other kind of grain setup. The thing with amaranth is when a plant is ready to drop a seed, we call it shattering, right? So when you're ready to collect the seed and the seed is done maturing and it's ready to be collected for harvest, and it shatters, it is very hard to predict when that is. With amaranth, it has over $100,000 per floret, right? 100,000 seeds per floret. Wow, I wish. I would not be here right now. I'd be like, seeds per floret, right? So if you miss any of those seeds, you're gonna have amaranth for the rest of your known life. I have amaranth for the rest of the time I own this farm. So Jan, when you guys come out there, you're gonna have some amaranth. So it does grow back. So you have to know when you're gonna harvest it for the grain, because it's really difficult. Herbs, culinary and medicinal. So during COVID, everyone saw that huge push for medicinal herbs, right? That has not deviated. So medicinal market is like this flat line of, there's the interested parties that want to use it, and you have these specialties, naturopaths and things like that, herbalists, and then all of a sudden something will happen, COVID or flu season. So you're going to see this huge spike, and then it's going to go and level back out. And I mean, I didn't cite my sources, but I mean, I trained as an herbalist for a long time, and I do work with herbal companies, so we talk about it a lot. So you have this flat surface, and then it jumps up. You don't know when that jump's going to be. So when you're looking at the medicinal market, and we'll talk about this in a little more, right now we're still in that peak. So you want to get in on the culinary herb business and the medicinal right here. You know, yeah, it's going to bottom out at some point, but it may not bottom out as much because everyone's going to be like, oh, I really like what these did, or I really like this, and people buy herbs and they never use them. They sit in their closets forever. So people buy them. So pH range, all this botanical stuff or all this biological stuff is going to depend on the plant, right? So this is our herb garden at Holbrook. It's the former 4-H bed, so it's all got all the pretty paintings on it. And we just planted a bunch there. You'll see basil, and we have oregano. We have all a bunch in there. Culinary and medicinal purposes. So medicinal herbs are consistent for the most part. Then they'll have like year increases. Culinary markets, the moment there is a change in someone's favorite food or food trend is when you're going to see a peak of that particular herb, group of herbs, flavoring, something like that. So, and it also depends on where you go. So it's kind of just understanding where your trend is to know where you're going to fit in that market. There is a base. So if you were to go like, hey, I'm going to start a business doing culinary herbs, and go to the kitchen, that cute kitchen store in Show, and say, hey, can I sell this? Here's all of my certificates, and this is my thing, and can I do it here? I'm sure she'd sell your product and it'd probably go really well. But as far as wholesaling, the option's there. You can wholesale, but it's based on the trends. I know, I can't remember who it was, it may have been Sandra, but she was mentioning online that she wants to do a chiltepin pepper farm, which is amazing because chiltepins right now are the hottest thing, no pun intended, but is the hottest thing right now for people that are not in Southern Arizona, because, you know, they're the new ghost pepper kind of. People want chiltepin this and chiltepin that. So I've sold so many plants and seeds of chiltepin. It's insane. Local markets, we talked about that, farmers markets, and then wholesale for US grown bulk dry herbs is in demand. Most of our herbs, medicinal and culinary, come from Europe or other countries. And they're having a hard time. A lot of these companies that are smaller and want to say, hey, we're US grown, they're having a hard time finding sources. Farmers are going out of business. They're not wanting to continue a lot of this. So there's that niche right there. Remember, with the niche market, once you find the niche, 10 other people are going to find the niche. So keep your niche. You know, you want to build your niche market, but you don't want to share your niche market, because look at goat soaps. You know, one person made goat soaps, and then you go to the farmer's market and there's 15 goat soap vendors, you know. So still make goat soaps, but just know that once you bump out of that niche gets kind of blown up, then you're moving on to your next niche. So specialty versus alternative. Most of the herbs that have the aerial parts, or the parts that are above ground, are specialty, and they do not address that well if they are root based, if they're specialty or not. So there is some verbiage about, you know, this doesn't cover everything, and it could be or it couldn't be. But if you're thinking of like echinacea, thinking of ginger, if you're thinking of garlic, kind of an herb, kind of an allium, things like that, they don't distinguish whether that is truly specialty. So that's just something to keep in mind. Special concerns. Herbal companies want organic, but they will purchase premium, fresh, dry herb that is not organic. But you will get more value if you are organic. So you go through that expensive process to be organic, like we talked about last time, but you will get that return on your value if you can wholesale. So then your equipment is going to be depending on your plant type and your varieties and what your goal is. If you look at rosemary, okay, so it's a perennial subshrub, so smaller shrub. But your goal is you want like the leaves, and the leaves don't actually grow until the plant gets bigger. I mean, you're going to start off with some leaves, but you don't want to harvest those the first year. So the plant is building up all that energy for its next harvest. So you can't harvest that for 2 years. You're not going to have a paycheck for 2 years versus borage, which is an annual plant that will grow, produce a flower and leaf in 1 year. So you have less long-term commitment. So that's what you want to look at. How's my time? Okay, lavender. Everybody asked about lavender. There's a big old bag in back of lavender. If you guys online could smell, it's amazing. Biological factors, you can grow it up to 8.0. Under 17 inches of rain per year. And your days of harvest is going to depend on your variety or your shrub age. So culinary, medicinal, scent, crafting, and body care are going to be your main uses. And then your market or potential market, you're going to wholesale and bulk are going to be 99.9% of people that are going to buy lavender from you. Crafters, chefs, and local farmers markets are going to be everybody else. Is a specialty crop? Big thing is people will cultivate lavender. Lavender does not want to be cultivated. Lavender wants to be left alone. Lavender is your angry teenager that does not want you to be in their room. Do not associate with lavender, anything like that. It wants the soil must drain. It does not, the roots do not like to be bound up or have water pooling. It likes sandy soils. It's arid and drought tolerant. It needs some watering. So some irrigation, some rain, especially based on bud development. However, if you overcare for your lavender, it will die. I've tried 4 different varieties of lavender, and then finally someone was like, stop trying to grow it. And I literally planted it and walked away, and it is alive. I'm like, I don't know, whatever. So if you want a crop that it's going to be beautiful, it's going to smell amazing, you're going to have some value to it, lavender is one to consider. Long-term investment is required. Your first harvest is not going to be immediately. So you're going to put a lot of money and not get anything back for a while. But like if you guys in the room can see Sarah's bag, that is from our 4-H agent Riva, who lives in Joe City, and she has like 20 plants, and there's 3 of those bags after 2 years. And so I bought them from her. So she had some, she can move them along. But if you're online, basically it's a Trader Joe's bag full of lavender cuttings. So there's 3 of those, and that's after 2 years, 20 plants. And then you want to do everything by hand. There are big, like in France, they have the big machines that will cut it, but you want to do all the trimming by hand. So it's more labor intensive, but you can do you can add that to your final price. Floral, right now, Ruby Jewel flowers, and I think one other flower producer is in the area. I don't know about you guys, if you follow Ruby Jewel flowers on the internet, on any social media, she can literally sell bouquets and things like that for, I don't know, $30, $40 sometimes. Her bridal bouquets are so amazing, and she gets the value for them. She's the only one up here. So who's everybody calling for flowers? Sorry, I love her, and not that I want to see her have any competition, but there's room in the market. And so we have this is I just grew these at the farm. That's amaranth in a sunflower bouquet. Evaluate your market conditions carefully. It's tied to expendable income. So when the market is great and people are spending money, you're going to do great. When there's no money in the area, you're going to have a lot of flowers left over. You'll be donating a lot of flowers. Bulb-based flowers are very expensive to buy. So if you're getting tulips or any of those fabulous dahlias that have like, dinner plate dahlias, $5 a bulb to start off with. So a new farmer, it could be a struggle because your product then is not for another, like 6 months, 4 to 6 months, if it grows. So just know that there is some concerns in that market. And then it depends on the plant type and varieties. Most flower farmers will want to have a hoop house or something because you do want to overwinter some plants and you want to start plants. And then most work is done by hand, so you really just can't use large equipment with that. Seeds, my bread and butter. On the side, this is my bread and butter. This is like my other bread and butter. And you just have to know what your biologic factors are for your seeds. You have your veggie seed market, your floral seed market, your agriculture and forage market, organic, native plant, specialty seed. So you have all these niches. Seed companies, they do buy bulk and wholesale. Contract growing it's what I do. It's what a lot of seed farmers do. I had my own seed company. I had to pay tons of fines to Arizona because I didn't understand the permitting process, and that there's a very long permitting process when it comes to being a seed seller and a seed packager. And so therefore, by contract growing, I don't do any of that. All I do is I get the contract. I say, yes, I will produce this much seed and I will get paid this much per bushel, pound, whatever. I sign it, I grow my seed, I test it. If it needs to be, I clean it, I send it off. And I don't have to deal with any permitting. I'm going to go into the permitting world here soon, but for right now, it's awesome. It's amazing. And I get to grow seed. And like, you know, it's really such a really good niche. And then local seed sales is great too. Local seed is just one of those things that I wish more people did. We have, if you're from Taylor, they grew a variety of cucumbers in the 1900s only for the packing plant down in Phoenix. And I cannot track that cucumber down, but it literally was grown here in Taylor every year for that thing. It was the only cucumber that came out. Just like the Grand Canyon onion, it's a Texas early grano onion, but they call it Grand Canyon onion because someone out by the Grand Canyon grew it every year for decades. And it became so acclimated to the area. It's the best onion there, the sweetest and most amazing. So I think having this local tie-in is really important. So this is my Hopi red dye amaranth seed. I removed it from the flower, and then all the little black seeds are what's left. And then, so all this extra junk I save for dyeing. You can actually dye fiber with it, and it's really pretty. And then, so this isn't quite clean yet. You can see I have a lot of junk in there still, but it's getting there. No clear answer from USDA if this is specialty or not. It's that gray line, you know, I don't know. You have to know a lot about seed saving. I learned the hard way. So I will tell you right now that pick 1 or 2 varieties. If you're going to do it, start there and then expand. It is the most time consuming because the farmer picks the fruit or vegetable, sends it to market. The seed farmer has to still keep that plant alive to the point where you can collect the seed. So you have an extra up to 30 to 40 days of trying to maintain all those environmental factors, all the insects, all the rodents, all the everything to try to keep that plant alive to go to seed. And then if your seed fails, you're like, come on, really? So it is extremely, extremely detail oriented. Paperwork is insane. There's so much paperwork to fill out. There's so much federal and state oversight, testing requirements, cleaning requirements. You have to have things tested for if there's any noxious weed in there, what is viable seed, what's not, and all this stuff. It's expensive. So people are like, why did I just pay $9 for 5 tomato seeds? It's like, because we have new laws that require so much testing that it literally, that's the only way you can recoup your money is by passing on the consumer. It's horrible. Like testing 1 batch of seeds is $250. 1 batch of seeds. If I grow 50 batches of seeds, that's times 50. So I got to pass it on. I can't pay a pocket for that. These are scarlet runner beans grown by the awesome 4-Hers. And then this is prump cotton that I grew. I grew out. So grow out means that you take a seed and then you're growing out a crop. And then your equipment needed, it just depends. You can get seed cleaning equipment that's really fancy. I use sifters and a fan. Native plants. My other thing that we do a lot of. pH range, same thing. Uses, seed, floral, culinary, medicinal. Your market is going to be bulk or wholesale. Seed or plants for public restoration. Here's my niche secret right now. I'm going to share, and if y'all take it, I'm going to be mad. There is a ton of restoration going on agency lands from fires. We've had the biggest fires ever, from mining, from all kinds of different things. They need the seeds from somewhere, right? You can't go out and pick enough seeds to be able to do this on the lands. They got to grow somewhere in these nurseries. Nurseries can't get the seeds because there's not enough people producing this seed. So there's actually farms now that are growing native plants. Like next year, I'm growing different native plants for a company. And so I'll have rows of something that I would normally walk by on the highway. That's a native plant. So I have a globe mallow. If they want me to I could go pick globe mallow right now in my backyard if they want globe mallow. Like anybody can grow. So I mean, you're talking these really weird niches of like, I'm sorry, you want me to grow globe mallow for you? Sure, it's already there, but okay. So yeah, there's a huge thing for that. Local farmers markets and then specialty stores. And that's normally with a lot of the medicinal, because a lot of our Southwestern plants do have a lot of medicinal history value, ethnobotanical value, things like that. And then if it's specialty, remember it depends on the use. You have to have that one cultivation cycle in there for it to count as specialty. You need to understand the plant and its needs. The number one failure of people that get our native plants, like I'm with Native Plant Society, they'll buy it from our sale, they'll cultivate this beautiful bed, they'll make this, they'll fertilize it, and it's just perfect. And then they'll put this native plant in it and the plant dies. And it's like, don't do that. Like literally go home and put it in where you think that plant exists in the wild. And if you don't know, we'll help you kind of figure out what it is. Because one, all you're gonna do is you're just gonna confuse that plant. It's like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here with all this like nitrogen. What? No, you know, I don't get it. But then the other thing you're gonna do is, especially if you're growing it for seed, is you're gonna create progeny that needs to have a cultivated environment to grow. So then you're messing with the fact that it may not grow when the land agencies want you to plant it because it's cultivated. So there's lots of little quirks about it. But your equipment needs, it's startup. If you do it small, it's super easy. If you want to go big, you're going to want to get a harvester because you're going to do blue grandma grass or Indian rice grass. Then you're going to need a harvester, you're going to need a planter, you're going to need acres, you need all that stuff. So just depends on what you're going to do. I grow blue flax, Mexican hat, Mexican primrose. I grow a bunch of really cool ones. I just have some resources here from like when we talked about sorghum, amaranth, and lavender. And then, are there any questions?
Would jojoba grow in Northeast Arizona and qualify as a specialty crop?
You have to talk louder. You're good.
Would jojoba grow in Northeast Arizona and qualify as a specialty crop?
Jojoba?
Yeah. Jojoba.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's okay. I'm like, what's jojoba? I don't know that I've only known it as a low desert plant. Would you have any familiar with it, Professor?
It does pretty well, like poncho, you know, so I would think if you're, I don't know, maybe it's too high here. I don't know. I don't think it. On the lower end, it doesn't.
Yeah, I'd worry about the freeze because it doesn't like freezing. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Next question, can you just gather those native seeds in the wild instead of cultivating? There are a lot of globe mallows and prickly pear around where I live.
So, okay, I don't have much time because Sarah's gonna go next. So I'm gonna refrain my tangent and keep it nice and I think. Okay, so there's permitting processes on state and federal lands as far as being able to gather seed, how much you can gather, and then where you can gather. And then on top of that, the state has other permitting. So state has it, federal has it, and state overrules private lands on that. So you can go out and gather it for your own personal use, which is a reasonable amount. So you or I could go out in the woods and get a reasonable amount, which is about a quart bag of seed. I think that's per year, might be per day, but I think it's per year. So we could gather that and use it for our own yards. If we were to sell that plant, we would need a permit for any of the agencies, BLM, Forest Service, state. NRCS doesn't have land, they're not land management, but you know, jump in if you know of any other land management that do it. But Department of Defense is another one, all those. If you were to sell that and then they find out that you are selling that seed that you harvested without a permit, the fines are not pretty. The jail time is not pretty. It's not worth the risk. So getting a permit is easier if we're going to do that. But in order to get, so let's say there's a fire and it burns 1,000 acres. In order to reestablish that, you're probably going to need upwards of maybe 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of maybe one seed variety. That's just one seed variety. If you're planting 7 seed varieties because you're matching the ecosystem, that's how much seed. You cannot collect that much globe mallow and stay sane. So that's why you want to farm it. I've tried, like I'm literally speaking from experience because I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to, you know, be that person. No, you can't. Like you don't eat, sleep, or anything else. You're literally trying to, and if you've cleaned globe mallow, it's not fun. So I would definitely look into the permitting process. And if you were going to gather, but farming it and cultivating it is the best way to get the amount of seed they need to be able to do their work. Jan, do you agree or disagree?
What type of quantities do your seed contracts require?
What kind of what?
What kind of quantities do your seed contracts require?
It just depends on the seed company. So like if I'm working with Native Seed Search, it's a small amount. Well, and keep in mind, I really work towards the foundational side of it, which is taking like, so someone finds this really cool seed that they only have like 10 of, you know, and I get some of those seeds, and then I'm the one that will try to grow it out to a certain genetic ideal. And then that seed is what's going to go to the farmers. So that is a whole different thing. The actual contract growing, it's going to be what the company asks you. It can be a pound and it could be 40 pounds. It just depends on your space and your abilities to provide and what else is growing near you. So if someone's like, comes to me and they're like, I want 40 pounds of corn, I'm going to say, sorry, not going to happen. Hatch is right down the way from me. Lewis is right down the way from me. I'm not going to potentially cross any, so I could grow you 0 corn. But if they were, you know, squash or something else, it would be a different story. So it's just what you're capable of doing and what you can do. Good. Okay. Well, thank you guys.